very good morning to you. How you guys doing? Welcome to the Morning Latte Show. And of course, we continue our 16 days of activism. This program has been proudly brought to you by Youth Engage with the proud support of UNAIDS Zimbabwe. So today we are talking about engaging men and boys as we continue, of course, our 16 days of activism, just talking about what gender-based violence is, its impacts, and so much more. So, with over 80% of gender-based violence cases being among women, today we ask why men are most likely to be the perpetrators and how they can also join the fight against gender-based violence. And to join me on this conversation, I have Nakai Ngomasha from SAF8, and of course I have Ignatius Chipendo from Youth Engage. Welcome, gentlemen. How are you today?
Hi, how are you?
I'm awesome. How's your Thursday?
It's been something so.
Yeah, it's been something else. And of course, we are about to round off the week. And yesterday, I know I was having a conversation with Audrey and Samantha saying, it's a Wednesday. Do you think you've achieved what you wanted, in the week? Because it's so important for us to reflect, on a daily basis. Nakai, do you think that it's a Thursday? So how are we looking?
Oh yeah, it's good to reflect, but I think it's important to have those goals before Monday,
right?
So that you can be ticking the boxes as you go.
That's so true. And do you think you've done a good job so far?
50%.
Okay, no, that's fine. We'll get there.
Definitely.
Yes, today we're talking about engaging men and boys, looking at the challenges and the opportunities, of course. And I think firstly, Nakai, being from SAF8, tell us the work that you do, especially when it comes to SAF8 linking it with gender-based violence.
All right, thank you so much. SAF8 is a regional organization, and we work in 6 countries.
Yeah.
We have our headquarters here in Harare, Zimbabwe.
Yes.
But we also do work in the Kingdom of Eswatini, formerly Swaziland.
Yes.
And also Lesotho, another kingdom again. And South Africa, Zambia, and Malawi.
Right.
Then Zimbabwe.
Right.
And our entry point is we work with young people, and we work with even other groups of people. But
Yes.
our entry point is we work with the young people.
Yes.
And we address issues of SRH, sexual reproductive health, and then its relationship, its interface with gender, and also gender-based violence. That's where the link is.
Yes.
It's difficult to cluster and say when you're doing SRH work, you not integrate with gender because it's gender related.
Right.
And if you look at gender, gender is relational. So wherever there are human beings, you will interact with gender. So we have different gender programs in these 6 countries. But maybe I will speak about Zimbabwe. We have a couple of programs that we run that incorporate gender. And at SAF8, we have adopted the gender transformative approach, which is kind of a new approach in terms of addressing the issues around gender. But what it all looks at, how do we address the issues of toxic masculinity? How do we engage looking at the costs of keeping rigid cultural norms that promotes the violence, or that promotes the subjection of women and girls.
Right.
And it goes on. It's a detailed way. It looks about power. How do we deal with power? Who has power?
Right.
What do they do with the power that they have? Power over, power with, power within. How do you use the power that you have? Do you use it constructively? If not, how can we help the people that have power? The issues of access and control. These are some of the issues that we look at when we look at the interface between sexual reproductive health and gender, which resultly sometimes we then look at gender-based violence because it becomes an encompassing issue that comes out of that.
I think it's quite interesting, and you've mentioned a few interesting aspects that we'll obviously unpack along the way, talking about toxic masculinity and who has the power, and how are the men or the boys using the power. But going back to the theme, and I'll throw this question to Youth Engage, of course. What does Orange the World mean as a theme? Fund, respond, prevent, collect mean to you?
To me.
Yes, to you. Because you already have orange on you already.
Oh! It didn't click
Yeah.
initially.
Yes, yes.
So as an individual, I mean, it's an opportunity not just to reflect, but this time take stock of not only what now this whole process of gender-based violence means, not just on the national work now,
Yeah.
but especially on a personal level.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, what do I do even as a man in ensuring that I don't perpetuate, but at the same time work together with fellow men, of course, to not only just transform the way we look at our relationships, not just with women, but also how do we take stock of that whole process and make sure that the power we wield doesn't necessarily end up becoming a weapon, so to say, in that whole process of trying to, you know, cover away, not just in life, but also in opportunities, in workspaces, and also even in terms of the lives.
Yes.
So, like you said, we're always in this whole perpetual, I think Nagaja say that, in a perpetual motion where as long as we're existing, we're in constant touch, not only with gender as a discussion, but just with people even in general.
Okay.
And in that whole dispensation, there's bound to always be, of course, not just a good way of interaction, but also there's bound to be friction.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
how is that friction managed? How do we come to terms with how we relate with one another, especially in those situations where one wields power, one has opportunities and access, but you need to balance that with humanity, with understanding that you are not the only person who exists, not just in the room as well, but even in the society. So that ability then to understand that dynamic becomes a personal process of reflection, and consistently that's so. So yeah, I mean, it's an opportunity to continuously do that. And of course, not just reflect on then discussions such as the funding aspect and how all of those things correlate within that whole discussion. But yes.
All right, Nakai, let's look at how you think as a nation we can collectively fund and respond to gender-based violence, since the theme in itself is a call to action, as you know, Ignatius was just basically unpacking what it means to him as a man.
I'm thinking as a nation we need to put our everything if this thing matters.
Yeah.
I think we need also to have a clear budgeting process. I know the budget is gone out, and I understand when I looked at it, I think there is an allocation to the ministry,
Right.
Minister of Gender, and I hope the programs are going to come and directly benefit the people, because I know we need to put resources, not just financial, but also human capital.
Yeah.
We you and I, when we see violence happening and we keep quiet, we are also becoming perpetrators.
Yes.
I think our biggest challenge for me as a nation is to break the couch of silence. We are okay with the couch of silence. Unotonzwa vanhu vachitoti when someone is achirowa utonza murowe mari yako akadya mari yako. There's an assumption that if a man is beating a woman in the streets, it's because pane mari yakadyiwa. Murowe angazodai mari yako, you know, things like that. And also I think we need to debunk certain fixations that we have, and also begin to interrogate some of the issues. I don't want to go deep into this thing now. I might open a can of worms, but I want us to begin, even our culture, to begin to challenge some of the things. If I pay lobola, it doesn't mean I've bought somebody.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that person becomes a property. It doesn't mean I have to treat her in a certain way.
Yeah.
It's our culture to do that, to pay lobola, not our culture of, you know. So we need to break the silence around issues of gender-based violence.
Right.
And I want to say it's high time in Zimbabwe, as men, we need to stand up and stop having violence represent us.
Right.
There are spaces where you go and violence has a male face. I think it's high time we need to challenge that. To say, when I am a man, it doesn't mean I'm violent. I'm a man, I'm a boy. I have no association with violence. I think it's high time we begin to challenge that and say violence will not represent the men of Zimbabwe.
I think that's quite profound. Ignatius, growing up as, you now being a man, growing up from being a boy, what were you taught? I mean, how were you socialized to treat women? I mean, going back to what Nakai was saying, he's talking about violence sort of representing the face of men. Is that how you grew up?
I would want to. I would want to say I'm one of the fortunate ones,
Right?
I guess, because the kind of process that, especially not just my father, of course, but my mother made me grow up in, is one such that being an only boy in the family of 4, where the rest are girls, my mother had this whole situation where all of us were equal.
Yeah.
Even though I was the firstborn, but it was more like everyone else was put on the same. I would have to do everything that everyone else had to do and ensure that the whole process. But of course, I understand. Not just now in my immediate family unit. Having had an opportunity, of course, to go to a boys' high school at some point.
Yes.
Of course, you go through different phases of understanding what is termed masculinity.
Yes.
And what being a man means. I'm sure. And of course, it's always punctuated by making sure that, I mean, you have not just a purely masculine face, but make sure that anything feminine that you own is discarded and discarded fully.
Right.
Because it has got its own connotations and what it means. I mean, even down to the smallest little intricacies of how you handled yourself. It was very important because, I mean, boys being boys, I mean, we needed to make sure that we represent. Otherwise,
what does that mean? We need to make sure that we represent.
So, how can I put it? I'm just trying to figure out a way of saying it in the sense. But there are definite, like intonations of what being a man means within your community. It means you must be strong. It means you must be unwielding. It means you have to have a certain demeanor about yourself. Not be quick to be emotional, of course.
Right.
Not to be quickly, like swayed by the madding crowd.
Right.
But be able to stand and be, and of course,
Yes.
It's the simple things like that. So you can start to pile up the whole thing. You never needed to show that you had any, like I said, any feminine aspect about yourself. That means being docile, being, can I say, chilled, being less, being wielding. I don't know if that even starts to make any sense, but being wielding, being, or even a CC in courts, we would have that, even a certain definition that goes along with that. So that means your demeanor, even the way you speak. I mean, if you had a lighter voice by then, you're in trouble.
Interesting. And, Nakai, I know you're the coordinator for Men Alliance. And, I mean, going back to the issue of toxic masculinity, let's talk about what it's about and what key role you play in making sure that men understand more about becoming less violent. Okay, not even being violent at all, and becoming the real men that they're supposed to be. Being compassionate, being loving, and being supportive within any environment.
Yes, thank you. As a coordinator of Men Engage Alliance, which is a global alliance for organizations and institutions that work with men and boys to promote gender equality, and I coordinate Men Engage Alliance in Zimbabwe. Which is, I think, more than 30 or so members.
Right.
So, which are organizations that work with this. and work on these issues, working with men and boys.
Yeah.
The whole idea, which I can talk about now, I want to pick from what Ignatius was raising.
Yes.
I'll give a scenario of how I was raised. I stayed with my mom, my grandmother. So in my world, it's surrounded by women.
Yes.
So, and I discovered that as I was growing up, I would get strokes. I would actually get marks for doing good. So mommy would say, "Well done. I'll buy you a bicycle. When you do this, when you achieve in school, you get all these nice strokes." But when I turned 12, 13, I began to realize that the only person who was giving me strokes was mommy.
Yeah.
But the world out there, in my days, even our dressing, we were wearing bad boys' shoes, bad boys,
Yeah.
So being bad became nice.
Right.
So actually bad was nice. So someone would say a bad shoe, a bad.
Yeah.
But they're actually saying nice.
Yes.
So I begin to realize that for me to get strokes outside, I needed to have something that I was not getting. Sorry. So from Mami's side, she became the only person that would give me strokes that side.
Right.
But the world would look at me like, really?
Yeah, really.
So at that point, what I would want to encourage, or what I would want to propose, is that we need to re-socialize.
Right.
We need to have a different sphere of what we call a man. Our current masculinity measure, or our current masculinity, how do I say, or way of gauging who is a man, our social construct has to change.
Yes.
And we begin to, like what you were saying, in out there, it looks like a man has to be decisive, has to be aggressive, has to be, but is that so?
Right.
Sometimes you might find that there are women that are decisive, and it's fine.
Yes.
There are men that are not dominating, and it's fine. So we need to redefine that and re-socialize the boys. We need to re-socialize the men, that you are okay with who you are, and what makes you a man is not the violent nature. What makes you a man is not dominating. What makes you a man is not being insensitive. What makes you so we need now to have a group, not just a group, but we need to begin to talk about how do we transform. How do we start to talk about transformative masculinity? How do we begin to talk about transformed men? And also, how do transformed men socialize other men? Because when you're a transformed man and you get to certain spaces, you can live there feeling like you are nothing, because there will be some people that are holding on. The issue with patriarchy. Patriarchy has been there for a very, very long time. And if we think that we'll remove patriarchy by one program, then we are not doing justice. It has been there for years.
Yes.
And allow me to use this language. Human beings, or people in Zimbabwe, we have actually been marinated into patriarchy to the extent that, and the challenge with patriarchy is, patriarchy recruits the people that it oppresses, and it makes them gatekeepers of patriarchy. So you realize that even the people that are supposed to be are supposed to be delivered from patriarchy, to use that word, actually perpetuate that knowingly or unknowingly. So for us to be able to re-engage at that level, we need to begin to dismantle the patriarchal. And patriarchy is in institutions as well. Patriarchy is in everything. You realize that the way people think, the way organizations are run, the way even nations are run, it's in a patriarchal system. Every organization, be it whatever, there's serious patriarchal value. So what we need to do for us to be able to do that is to challenge it together.
Right.
And realize that, remember, men are not always beneficiaries of patriarchy.
Right.
Men are also victims of patriarchy.
Yes.
You realize that there are some men who are in serious trouble right now because of patriarchy. And you were supposed to pick a woman because everyone was picking a woman. And they went there and something happened. They got in serious trouble because they wanted to measure up.
Yeah.
So there's this thing that men are not always beneficiaries of patriarchy. They also become victims of it. So men and women, we are victims of patriarchy. Let's fight it together. Let's unite our effort, and let's see how we can defeat it by combining our efforts together.
I think, I mean, you just pointed out a few key areas looking at transformative masculinity and the fact that, the different communities and different institutions are holding on to. And we see that within religion and, within our corporate world and so much more. So you've basically really answered my next question. We were going to talk about, our cultural practices and gender norms that perpetuate gender-based violence. But Ignatius, let's talk about the current barriers to gender-based violence survivors when we look at access to justice. What are the current barriers?
I think, like we talked about last time,
Yeah.
we're looking at issues to do with not just the justice system, of course, but of course every other supporting institution that is supposed to work together to ensure that this whole process goes.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there's been now a lot of effort in trying to make sure that this system becomes as easy as possible. But I think more still needs to be done to ensure that, for example, health becomes priority, and then everything else that ensures that justice is served then follows through.
Yeah.
Because you'll find that victims end up getting a three-layered whole thing. Because the first thing is, not only have you been probably abused, but you now are carrying probably an unwanted pregnancy. At the same time, you're carrying, probably you've been infected, not only with HIV but even STIs.
Yes.
And on top of that, then the whole process then slows you down. You don't have an opportunity to quickly report, so that you quickly get access to services, so that you quickly reconnect back into the society. So, but before even we talk about that, I remember initially we were talking about just the system of reporting itself, how difficult it is to come up and say, I have experienced violence.
Yeah.
Which is not just a structural issue, but even on a personal level. We're looking at how an individual has to come to terms with the fact that they not only have been abused, but to come up and then report.
Yes.
We have experienced a lot of issues, I think, even in mainstream media, where you find that people eventually report after more than 30 years that we are experiencing a form of violence. So that alone, just that whole personal process of getting to the point of understanding that I have been or I've experienced violence, to the point where you then report to then responsive systems and multiple forms of opportunity or platforms to report because, like we said, all of those things are different. It's no longer, like, for example, during the COVID era, the whole normal system of walking into a center and saying, you know what, was automatically difficult. Calling was probably even difficult as well, because the phone, I mean, most of the victims of violence are usually very poor.
Yes.
So for them to even afford a phone or to even afford airtime to make that call was already going to be difficult. Then most importantly, then to arm the community and the society so that they become supportive structures, like we talked about last time. Of the 60 people we report, only 10% report to authorities. So almost 90% report to their relatives, to their friends, to their community members, to their immediate society. So how can we arm that society to ensure, like you said, that we break this culture of silence?
Yes.
That we actually realize that the person has been, and we need to support the way that. So all those are then barriers that start from a personal level to a community level to then a structural level. And all these systems, the idea at the end of the day is, if they can put the human first and ensure that this survivor gets all the necessary services that they can, and then also eventually the justice that they deserve, will be important.
I think it's very, very critical. And of course, looking at engaging men and boys, Nakai, I mean, what sort of progress have we made? Because obviously you're talking about a lot of men holding on, or even boys being groomed within this issue of toxic masculinity. Have we made progress? And do we see a change? Or, I mean, where does the change begin? Because obviously, as Men Alliance, you might play a critical role when, you know, the guys come to your clubs or you're communicating through different platforms. But where does the change really begin?
Thank you so much. I want to appreciate the work that has happened starting around late 1995 after the Beijing, when institutions started looking at not gender equality, not just from the women in development,
Yeah.
but when we are also adopted a gender in development. From that place onwards, we started engaging, or they started having some work around working with men and boys. And now it has grown.
Yes.
The work has grown. There's been a lot of progress in terms of men being socialized, in terms of men being engaged. There's been a lot of work.
Yes.
But remember, we are dealing with patriarchy,
Yes.
which is huge. So what we also need to build supportive system
Right.
that if you have a son, for instance, how are you helping him to model him
Yes.
to be the kind of man that will not perpetuate toxic masculinity? So that becomes a work for everybody,
Yeah.
not just a program that is sponsored, but it becomes a lifestyle. How do we socialize girls to also be assertive? How do we socialize boys to respect girls, to respect girls' leadership? That's where it starts. How do we socialize them to begin to say we are equal and we need to move together? There is nobody who is supposed to take advantage of anybody. So it starts even at a household level, where mom and dad raising the kids. How do they do that?
Right.
The kind of toys we buy for our kids, the kind of language we correct them with, the kind of power that we give them. Because if I'm going to leave a house and I say to a 3-year-old, now I'm going to travel, but you're the man of the house, and there are women that are in there, I'm already socializing that boy that even if these women are there, but he is the man of the house at 3. So you realize that at 2, 3, you hear boys saying, hey, I'm in charge here. As long as dad is not here, I take over. Even if mommy will be told that by 3, what
Yeah.
are we doing? We're already socializing. So the thing is, socialization is not in the past tense. Not always in the past tense.
Yeah.
We are actually socializing.
It's a constant process.
It's a constant process.
Yeah.
So what are we doing at an individual level?
Right.
How am I influencing the boys and the girls in my life? What kind of language do I? So for those that have been engaged and transformed men, I think also we need now to have models of men, the modeling part. Because when the young people start to see, or when the children start to see that, uncle speaks this way,
Yeah.
uncle raised, this is the way he views things.
Yeah.
He's different from this. And you are known in certain spaces. I support soccer. And fortunately or unfortunately, my team lost last night. But
How are your BP levels?
no, they're okay because the
Okay.
team played very well. I was actually happy with the
Okay.
performance. So for the first time, I wasn't that hurt. For the first time, because sometimes, I was going to postpone this. But in one of the groups that I
Yeah.
belong to on WhatsApp, this group, I remember when I joined the group,
Yeah.
there was a lot of these chauvinistic talk. When soccer, when men and soccer, or human beings and soccer, you hear language which is toxic, emasculating, and all that. So I started raising issues to say, today is also a disability day where someone would say, if someone is not playing well, what uchirema? And I started challenging that to say, no, we don't need to talk like that.
Yes.
You guys, you don't know me.
Yeah.
I might be in a wheelchair right
Yes.
now, and you have
yes,
no idea.
Yes.
It started like that.
Yes.
But it's one of the spaces that I can tell you, it's so transformative. To the extent that if you say something to demean women or to pull down women, you are removed. We don't talk about that anymore. I've never met the admin. I've never met some of the guys. They are all over the world.
Yeah.
But we have made it a space. What am I talking about? I'm saying in spaces that you belong. Transform those spaces little by little. Before we know it, we're going to saturate the whole nation with those messages. Being in church, start to begin to saturate.
Yeah.
It's not just good for, I remember in my church at one time, there was a department that was called Mother's Section.
Right.
And fathers, we went there and started sitting there as well. And fathers, we started also going out with our kids when they are crying,
Yes.
and give them the bottle.
Yes.
When that started happening, the culture changed. Now it's called Parents Section. So small things like that, we are beginning to challenge already. So in spaces that you belong to, transform those places, be the salt in those places.
I think that is profound, Nakai, because I know there was a time I traveled and I was the only lady there, and I traveled with some certain guys for some project. The language that they were using,
You see,
kuti iwauzere bhedu wangomutengera pizza zvinenge zvate, I mean, men have been socialized to such an extent where you start wondering, how do we become the change within those small spaces? And the conversations I was now having with them, no guys, let's not use that sort of language. I mean, where is the problem really coming from at the end of the day? And you're definitely right, it is we have to constantly evolve. It's a constant process. It's not that socialization happens just in one day. But thank you so much. That was Nakai from Safades, and of course Ignatius Chipendo, as we're talking about engaging men and boys, looking at the challenges and the opportunities. Remember, this program was partly brought to you by Youth Engage with the support of UNAIDS Zimbabwe. Thank you so much. Cross over with me on www.hstv.co.zw. In a little bit, we'll come back to talk about the second phase of COVID-19 with a doctor that will tell us what we need to prepare for. And I'm going to shut it down with Africa Revenge. Ano Chengeta. We'll be right back.